Welcome to the Daily Fantasy Cafe podcast. I'm your host, Josh Shepherdson, or for those of you on Twitter, you're probably familiar with me as @BeatShed50. Today's topic is daily baseball preview of the American League West, and this is the wild, wild West indeed. We're talking about a division that features one of the best projected teams this year by wins, the Angels, who project to win 88.5 games, followed by the Mariners, projected to win 86.5 games, the A's at 81.5 games, Rangers at 76, and the Astros bringing up the rear at 75.5 games. And those win total projections are by Pinnacle Sports. This is a division that has some serious talent, and one that you're going to see daily gamers dipping into fairly frequently to find some rosterable options. Taking a look at the ballparks, we got Angel Stadium. Let's kick that off. The ballpark, according to Stat Corner, boosts strikeout rate, but wreaks havoc on runs scored and home runs, suppressing both. The O.Co Coliseum in Oakland, another ballpark that suppresses home runs and suppresses runs to left-handed batters. So those are the park factors you need to know there. Safeco Field makes it 3 for 3 on home run suppressing ballparks, namely to right-handed batters. K percentage though, K rate park factor is favorable if you're looking to start some pitchers there with a 105 K factor to left-handed batters. And then you've got 107 for right-handed batters. It is a ballpark that suppresses runs as well, so you're going to like to see that if you're using starters there. Runs are suppressed 12% with an 88 park factor for lefties, and suppressed 11% to righties with an 89 park factor. So Safeco Field, good ballpark for using pitchers in. All three, Angel Stadium, O.Co Coliseum, and Safeco, good for suppressing runs, good for using fly ball pitchers at. Next up is Minute Maid, which is not a park that suppresses runs. It suppresses home runs. It actually amplifies home runs with a 120 park factor for homers to lefties and a 114 park factor for righties. And you'll see why that's exciting for Astros hitters when we get to them a little bit later in the podcast. Globe Life Park for the Rangers has a home run factor of 105 for lefties, but suppresses the home runs to righties with an 88 factor. It does amplify runs to lefties 110 and amplifies them ever so slightly to righties by 1% with a 101 park factor. So if you got a left-handed bopper, decent ballpark, you're going to get a 10% boost in runs scored there and a 5% boost in home runs. So get your lefties ready. They have a few in their own lineup that look to benefit from that this year. Let's start off with the Astros, though, when we break these down team by team. And this is basically a real-life GPP lineup. I mean, it is boom or bust, with the exception of their leadoff hitter, exceptional hitter, Jose Altuve, who won the batting crown last year with the highest batting average. He is the most reliable contact option in the lineup. He's arguably the top talent in the lineup when you factor in his positional eligibility at second base. Second base, not the deepest position for daily fantasy talent. So Altuve is going to be a regular, really crushes left-handed pitching. So you're going to want to use him when he faces a southpaw. Could get a boost in runs scored potential this year with what looks like a more talented Houston Astros lineup. George Springer is the highest upside plus lineup, a very toolsy outfielder with some strikeout issues. Get used to hearing the strikeout issues repeated throughout the power. Another thing that's going to repeat. Did steal more bases in the minors than one would expect looking at his stolen base total in the majors last year. This is a guy that can really fill all 5 stat categories. Average is probably going to lag, but for the daily gamers, it doesn't matter so much. You're rostering him in the hopes that he has a big game and goes 3 for 4 with a dinger, and the strikeout woes don't hurt him. All of these strikeout woes hitters are much more valuable when facing pitchers that really pitch to contact. This is a lineup that can do some damage against pitchers like that. Speaking of big power and big strikeout rates, Chris Carter is the poster child for that in this lineup. Huge, massive raw power. Hit well over 30 home runs. Made a run at 40 last year. Could make a run at 40 home runs again this year and actually get there. He's backed by Evan Gattis, who comes over from the Braves. His value is going to get a slight knock in daily games since he's not going to likely be catcher eligible at any point this year. It's unlikely he's going to double his endurance this year. He's going to possibly DH a bit, which means that he's going to fall talented player pool. But when the matchup's right, his big raw power makes him worth using. Another GPP guy because there is some strikeout issues there. Rest of the lineup's not super interesting, but you got Luis Valbuena, who you can use against right-handed pitching. If he hits second in the order, which is a possibility, that would definitely enhance his value. Colby Rasmus in the outfield. Big power, big strikeout rates. Don't want to use him against lefties. Good option against righties if you're in a GPP and looking to get somebody who could find the seats. Jed Lowry, switch hitter. Down year last year, decent year the year before. His 16 home runs a few years ago when he was with Houston his first go-around. Decent option to position. If he happened to slot second, that would be great for his value. Even down order, shortstop's not the deepest position for offensive talent, so Lowry's going to be a guy that you can roster with some regularity. Jason Castro, you're hoping for a bounce back from him if you're going to use him this year. Don't want to use him against lefties. Can use him against righties. I do expect him to get a little bit better. Hitting down order, that hurts his value, but there aren't a ton of catchers that hit in the heart of their order anyway, so Castro's a guy that's going to be in the mix. Jonathan Singleton's a bit of a wild card. Really good minor league numbers, good pedigree, but strikeout rate really crippled him last year. He's going to have to prove it to the big leagues before he's on any of my daily fantasy rosters. The rotation's decent. Dallas Keuchel broke out last year. Not a huge strikeout guy, but you know what? He can punch out enough that he's still in play at DraftKings or other sites where the strikeouts are valued heavily. Big ground ball rate, best in the business last year among qualified pitchers. So he won't have to worry about the home run park factors at Minute Maid if he's keeping the ball on the ground at such a high rate, which he does. Pounds the strike zone. I like Keuchel. Should pitch deep into games. He's going to be a favorite on some nights just because he's a talented pitcher and he's backed by a decent lineup. When he is a favorite, you're going to want to roster him. Colin McHugh is a surprise breakout last year. Basically a junk ball pitcher. Scrapped his sinker, which was a good move since it was a bad pitch. Four-seam fastball played well. Threw a lot of breaking balls, which is great for the strikeout rate. I like Colin McHugh. Does give up some fly balls, so he's going to give up the gopher ball occasionally. But he's another guy in that lineup. Probably higher ceiling start from Keuchel, but a little bit lower floor. The sleeper in the rotation is Daniel Straley. Has some swing and miss stuff. Probably going to have some GPP value at some point because he can get some strikeouts, but is going to give up the home runs on occasion because he is a fly ball pitcher. So there's going to be some volatility there. He hasn't really put it all together at the big league level. Doesn't have top shelf stuff, but can miss bats. So guy that's a GPP consideration and a sleeper. Moving on to the Rangers. This is a club that isn't what it was a few years ago. Injury to Yu Darvish took a big piece away from the rotation, and they aren't the super talented cream of the crop in this division anymore. Leonis Martin, since I've written the team preview, has been announced as the likely leadoff hitter, which increases his value. Still not a great player because a lot of his value is tied to speed. More of a season-long option. A little bit of power, but the lineup spot's good. So if some hitters like Shin-Soo Choo and Prince Fielder bounce back like I expect them to, he's going to have some runs scored potential. And against a bad pitcher, especially at a site that doesn't score negative value for recording outs, you're going to want every at-bat you can get, and Martin's going to get more at the top of that lineup. Speaking of Choo and Fielder, these are two guys you're not going to really want to roster against left-handed pitching, but if they bounce back like I do think they will, Fielder not necessarily to peak years, Choo probably not to peak years either, but bounce back to be well above average hitters, which I think is possible. You're going to want to trot them out against right-handed pitching. Depending on where Choo hits in the order, there's going to be some stack potential. Adrian Beltre is the star of the lineup. He really hits left-handed and right-handed pitching well, and he's a guy that can hit for power, hit for average. He's a safe option in GPPs and cash games. There's some upside that you like in the GPPs, and in a game that's volatile, he's going to provide a little bit more reliability than some other options if you're looking for a cash game pick. The upside play in this order is Rougned Odor, the second baseman. Probably going to hit down order, which hurts his run production upside, but with a limited number of second basemen hitting in the heart of their order, you can lump a lot of other second basemen in the down order category. But he does have some upside. He's really young, so there may still be some struggles ahead. But when he faces a right-handed pitcher, at least keep him on your radar, especially if it's a bad righty. Probably going to be priced cheap. Might have some upside to exceed his early season pricing. The rotation, basically, it's Derek Holland and everybody else. Derek Holland used his slider more last year, and the whiff rate went up as a result. I expect his strikeout rate to follow suit if he's going to continue to lean on his slider. I like Derek Holland a lot this year. He's not backed by the greatest offense in the world in Texas, but I do expect the Rangers to be at least an average offense. And if Fielder and Chu come back to anything resembling their past form, it could be a very, very good offense, and Holland could find himself a betting favorite often, and a guy that I'll be rostering regularly. The rest of the rotation, the reason you're going to want to know those names are so that you can stack hitters against them. Moving on to the A's lineup is going to feature some platoons, and if not platoons, guys that you don't want to use when they face the weaker side of their platoon split. Lineup starts off with Coco Crisp, who's nicked up. Pew shocker there. Coco Crisp struggles to stay healthy, which hurts him in season-long leagues. But when he's healthy, decent switch hitter, guy that you should keep on the radar because he does have a little bit of power. Walks at a high rate, can steal some bases. Not a great option, but a decent option in the outfield when the matchup is right. Ben Zobrist, depending on where he's eligible at the site that you're playing, if he's second base eligible and shortstop eligible, he's in play. If he's an outfielder, it's a little bit tougher to use him because of the depth of the position, the lack of upside, but he's going to have some run production potential. Can hit for a little bit of power, can steal a few bases. Josh Reddick's a guy worth mentioning because he has a weird reverse platoon split. He's a right-handed batter that actually hits right-handed pitchers better. File that away in your memory bank when he's facing some bad right-handed pitchers. He could be a sneaky play that gets by some of the even savvy daily gamers. Billy Butler and Marcus Semien are two guys who hit left-handed pitching well that you're going to want to keep an eye on. Butler's a good cheap option at first base when he faces a lefty. Make him prove that he can hit right-handed pitching well again before using him. First base is just too deep to screw around with a guy like Butler when he just hasn't hit right-handed pitching well. Didn't hit him well last year. Marcus Semien, big minor league numbers, has failed to really translate those to the bigs with the exception of hitting lefties. He's hit them hard. Could be a cheap option at shortstop where he's expected to play this year. Might open the season eligible only at second base on the daily providers depending on where you play, since that's where he really played with the White Sox last year. Ike Davis moved around last year, was a Met for part of the season, Pirate for part of the season. Now he's in Oakland, where they're going to utilize the fact that he can hit right-handed pitching and walk at a high rate, and probably sit him in favor of someone else against lefties, maybe Nate Fryman, maybe someone else. Davis is a sneaky good option because he has such a sizable platoon difference. His struggles with left-handed pitching are going to bring his overall price tag down. Power's going to be hurt a bit playing at O.co, but he's a guy that walks a lot. He could have some sneaky value as a punt player pretty close to it, because I don't expect him to be priced very high at first base. If you're looking to spend heavily on pitchers, especially if you're at a site like DraftKings, Davis is a nice bargain play at first base when facing a right-handed pitcher. Stephen Vogt's going to catch, which is good for his fantasy value. Played around the diamond last year, caught some, played some outfield, played some first base. Now that he looks like he's going to be the starting catcher, he's a guy that you're going to want to trot out there on occasion against right-handed pitching. Depending on where he hits in the lineup, he could have more value if he hits high in the lineup. If he hits down order, still going to have some value because there aren't a ton of catchers that hit in the greatest lineup spots anyway. So Vogt could have some very cheap appeal in daily games as well. Rotation's fairly talented. You've got Sonny Gray leading it off, Scott Kazmir, Jesse Hahn, Jesse Chavez, and Drew Pomeranz projected as a starting five. All struck out better than 20% of the batters they faced last year. All have the upside to repeat that this year. Jesse Hahn's the sleeper name in that group for me. He pitched very well in San Diego. I expect him to continue to pitch very well in Oakland. He's a guy who might have the most value of any arm in that rotation this year. Looking down the line a little bit further this season, Jared Parker and A.J. Griffin are returning from injury. Could end up pushing Pomeranz from the rotation or Chavez if either one have daily value if they're priced low while they prove their way back. Most likely they'll have some rehab starts, so you'll get some numbers to work with. And if you can find out what their velocity readings are and find some scouting reports on them before they get to the big leagues, you'll have a better idea of whether they're really worth rostering when they first get activated from the DL. Sometimes guys like that can provide some value because they're going to be underpriced due to injury. And if the scouting reports are good, you could get some sneaky value there. I would be more inclined to use them in GPPs where you're really taking a chance anyway, but monitor those two as the season goes on. Seattle Mariners are next up. Their lineup is headlined by Austin Jackson. Interesting nugget that came out within the last couple days is that the club could use Ricky Weeks in the leadoff spot with Jackson hitting second against left-handed pitching on occasion. That would be really nifty for Ricky Weeks, who's going to be platooning in the outfield. And maybe seeing the occasional spot start at his old position if they decide to give Robinson Cano a very rare day off. But Weeks' value is hurt by the move to the outfield. But if he plays someplace else in the infield, there's been some talk that he might play a little bit of first base. He took some reps there. Depending on where he's eligible, could be a nifty punt play against lefties. He does hit them hard. And if he hits lead off, that would only enhance his value. Jackson needs to rebound from a down campaign last year. I do think he's capable of it. When he does hit leadoff, he's going to be hitting in front of some good hitters that can really drive him in. Seth Smith is going to hit second. He's a guy that does not hit left-handed pitching. Forget about him against lefties. Does hit right-handed pitching. Going to provide some value as a cheap option in the outfield on occasion. Again, when you're looking to spend heavily on pitching or someplace else, Smith will make for a nice glue guy on your roster. Robinson Cano is the star of the order. Really crushes right-handed pitching. Going to be pricey because of how good he is, but sometimes it's worth it at those thin positions like second base to really pony up. Nelson Cruz moves from Baltimore to Seattle. I'm going to be fading him early in the season because his price is going to be inflated from his big year. Don't like the ballpark. Eventually, when he's priced fair, he'll be in play, especially against lefties. Kyle Seager, on the other hand, their third baseman, not in play against lefties, doesn't hit them well enough, but the third baseman does really hit right-handed pitching well. Good option at third base, going to be priced a little bit cheaper than some of the stars at the position. Does have big RBI potential behind Cano, Cruz, and Smith, all very good on-base players. And Seager's going to have a chance with some ducks on the pond to drive some in. Logan Morrison, not going to be a big option this year, most likely, unless he really takes a step forward, but young enough that could happen. Best case scenario, he ends up being a bargain first baseman. Worst case scenario, he continues to be a middling hitter and just is a non-daily option. Mike Zunino hit over 20 home runs last year, has some pop at the position, strikes out about a bit much for cash game, for liking him in cash games. Bad batting average, could go up a little bit this year, but Zunino's best reserve for GPPs, but his power does make him a fine option if you're looking to chase a home run. Dustin Ackley, he's going to be your platoon partner for Ricky Weeks. Doesn't really do enough against any kind of pitching for me to feel great about touting him. His down order spot hurts a bit as well, but against a bad enough right-handed pitcher, Ackley might have some value. Shortstop stinks. Bradley Miller is going to be starting there this year. Chris Taylor is eventually probably going to push him for the position. Neither has much more than pawn appeal at best. Rotation is talented, though. King Felix headlines it. He's one of the best starting pitchers in the game. Going to be a big-ticket item, but one that's worth spending on at sites that reward strikeouts heavily. If you want to go with the pitcher-centric approach at FanDuel, since they only start one starting pitcher, Felix will have some appeal there too. Just recognize you're not going to get the point scoring that you would in strikeouts that you would at DraftKings, for instance. Hisashi Iwakuma, not as good as King Felix, but few are. He is a very good pitcher that would headline some other rotations. Going to be a nice, the split-fingered specialist is going to be a nice daily option. Good ground ball rate, good ballpark, can miss some bats, occasionally struggles with some home runs, but I giving up home runs, but I do like Hisashi Iwakuma. James Paxton's surface stats were a bit misleading. Talented pitcher, has upside. I don't expect him to repeat last year's success. He's going to have to cut back on the walks a little bit to really have sustainable, top-notch success, but is a lefty with some swing and miss stuff. So I do like James Paxton. He'll have value this year. I wouldn't trot him out early. He's probably going to be slightly overpriced, but once he settles into what his true level of talent is, I do think you're going to have a valuable pitcher on your hands. Jay Happ has value for stacking against. The left-handed pitcher struggles against right-handed hitters, so you're going to want to pile some righties in the lineup when in your daily lineups when Happ is on the hill, especially when he plays at a hitter-friendly ballpark, not his own. Might have some punt, not exactly punt appeal, but bottom barrel appeal when he is favored at home, and he can benefit from his run suppressing environment. But otherwise, I'm not using him on the road. I'm not using him against righty heavy lineups. Taijuan Walker is an exciting name, big stuff, young pitcher that has some upside. Best reserve for GPPs early, but probably going to be priced cheap because he hasn't exactly lit the big league world on fire, but has the talent to do that. So I like Taijuan Walker a lot early, and he'll be on quite a few of my GPP teams. Has the type of talent to miss bats and strike out batters plenty, and so I do like Taijuan Walker. And of course, you got to love Safeco Field. So when he's pitching at home, he's going to get a little bit of forgiveness with his ballpark factors. Rounding out the division is the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, and they've got a talented lineup. Cole Calhoun leads things off, has hit left-handed and right-handed pitching well, but the left-handed hitter is best used against righties. He's followed in the order by switch hitting shortstop Eric Ibar, who's an above-average hitter for the position. So Ibar is a guy that you're going to want to use regularly in daily games. Probably not going to be priced super expensive because while he is talented, he's not in the elite at the position. So decent, cheap-ish play. I like Eric Ibar. Can hit lefties and righties, better against lefties. So keep that in mind with Ibar. Mike Trout is Mike Trout. I mean, what else is there to say? The guy's the best player in baseball. He's a terror to right-handed and left-handed pitching. He's going to cost a king's ransom to use, which is going to make it difficult to roster him with regularity. But, I mean, he's the type of guy that can single-handedly carry a daily team with his speed, with his power, with his ability to draw walks, drive in runs, score runs himself. I mean, he is a do-it-all talent and really the best in the business. When he's in a great hitter's park against a crappy pitcher, sometimes it's going to be worth biting the bullet, budgeting for him and spending heavily just because you don't want to be the guy that doesn't have Mike Trout when he has one of these 2 home run, 2 stolen base, 4 RBI, 4 runs scored, 4 hit efforts. Just the volatility of hitters makes it tough to always tout these pricey guys, but Trout has an unlimited ceiling, basically. Albert Pujols is on the downside of his career, but he hits in a great lineup spot to drive in runs, and for daily gamers, that matters. I mean, we know RBI are lineup dependent. Pujols is in a good lineup for driving in runs. I don't think he has the power of yesteryear. His ISO would suggest that he's trending the wrong way, but there's enough here that he is a good option after the upper echelon of first baseman. Probably going to be a little cheaper than some. Going to have some big value when the Angels are facing a bad starting pitcher. Other names in the lineup to keep an eye on: Matt Joyce. Joyce does not hit left-handed pitching. He's going to be a cheap value pick a lot of the time against right-handed pitching, though. Again, really good lineup. These are the type of lineups that you want to grab hitters from. The ones that have that run production upside, and the Angels certainly have that. Joyce hits right-handed pitching well enough that you're going to want to roster him on occasion, save some money in the outfield, get a guy whose overall price tag is depressed by his struggles against lefties. David Freese doesn't struggle against lefties. Basically, hitting lefties is about the only thing you can count on from David Freese at this point. He is not playing at the level that he did in his last years with the Cardinals, but he still is crushing left-handed pitching. Keep him in mind as a bargain play against lefties, especially if he happens to move up in the order. Joyce is obviously not going to hit 5th against lefties. He's probably not even going to play against lefties, which leaves that 5th spot open to possibly David Freese. If he hits there, he's going to have some really sneaky appeal. If he doesn't, it's probably because a guy behind him, CJ Cron, leapfrogs him. Cron has big raw power, not a great hitter against right-handed pitching, but has hit left-handed pitching hard in his limited big league time and also done so at the minor league level. Cron is a player that should have some GPP appeal because he can put a charge into the ball. Hasn't posted big home run rates in the big leagues, may never do that, but the raw power's there. Scouting reports really like what he can do from a raw power perspective. If that translates into games, he could move up the daily game pecking order at first base, but the position's deep, so he's nothing more than a bargain bin option, and even if he breaks out, it's unlikely he's going to ascend to superstar status at the position, but still got to have your bargain plays at every position, first base is included. Chris Iannetta, it almost rounds things out. He's the 8th hitter for the lineup. Has done well since leaving Colorado, surprisingly well. High walk rate helps. Also has above average power. If you put him in a hitter-friendly ballpark when the Angels go on the road, he's a guy that might have some value despite his low lineup slot. Going to be cheap at catcher. Going to possibly provide above average production. You get the Angels in a game with a big over under total. Even those down order hitters like Chris Iannetta can have value, and he's better against lefties than righties. So keep that in mind when you're filling out your lineup. Josh Rutledge is not a guy that I like. Punt value at best because second base stinks, but not a guy that I'll be rostering. Let's close the show with the rotation. Jared Weaver's velocity is reportedly down. Not good news for a guy who struggled with already low velocity last year. His ERA is starting to fall closer in line with his FIP. He's been a guy that's beat it in years past. Not a big Weaver guy. Probably going to be overpriced for my liking. Not a guy I'm going to roster in DraftKings games because his strikeout upside is just not there anymore. Maybe in FanDuel games if he's priced right and the Angels are a big favorite. Garrett Richards is the crown jewel in this lineup and this rotation. Big strikeout stuff. Great option to carry daily teams at DraftKings and sites that reward strikeouts heavily. Also going to be a favorite often because one, he's a good pitcher, and two, he's backed by a good lineup. So going to be a guy that should be in line to get some wins this year. Obviously, wins are volatile, but Richards can pitch deep into the games and kind of take things into his own hands. C.J. Wilson really needs to bounce back. Not a big C.J. Wilson fan. The lefty struggles with walks. I'll pass on him early in the season. Matt Shoemaker is very interesting. Flies under the radar because he was not a highly touted prospect. Kind of came out of nowhere last year. Good strikeout rate, great walk rate, sneaky good appeal. I'd say he's a strong SP2 in reality, which makes him a very strong SP1 in games like DraftKings, where you're starting two pitchers and strikeouts are rewarded favorably. Also going to be usable at FanDuel because the Angels are going to put him in a position to win some games this year. The 5th spot's up for grabs. Nick Tropiano and Andrew Heaney are really the names you want to see competing for that. You really don't want Hector Santiago in there. Santiago's not very exciting. Heaney's actually the most exciting name of the bunch, but he struggled this spring. Stuff's good. If he figures it out, you got a guy that could be a GPP option. Probably not a cash games option until he really gets acclimated to the big league level. But there's some appeal 1 through 5 in the rotation. Less so with Wilson unless he bounces back. But the fact that you have 5 guys that are at least not terrible is unusual. Not every rotation can boast that. So the Angels have something here. Their lineup looks good. That's a team that's going to be very giving for daily gamers this year. And that's going to wrap it up for the American League West preview here on the podcast. We'll be continuing to move on with the National League coming up next. So I hope you'll tune back in. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com to read these team previews and get a little bit more in-depth coverage. Also check out the wonderful NBA content up there now as well. A lot of really good stuff going up on the site. So thank you for tuning in. Take care.